Hello and welcome to Rosie's Preserving School, when today we're going to be making the great sort of pinnacle of jam making, strawberry jam. I don't cover this very much because I think it's probably now one of the most difficult jams to make, even though traditionally that's what everybody made every summer. But we're going to also recap on jam making in general, because we haven't done a lot of it recently, and I think it's worthwhile going over the basic principles while we're preparing our strawberries. And jam making in as such is very, very easy, and everybody gets sort of quite het up about it, and the set and the boiling and everything else. So we'll go through it step by step. Apologies for those of you that think, well, I know what I'm doing, I don't need to hear all this. I think being strawberry jam, the recording will be attractive to people who've never made jam, because they always want to make strawberry jam first, which presents all sorts of problems really these days. Now, jam needs a few things. Absolutely, they must be there or it won't be successful. And as I've said before, it's more like doing chemistry than cooking. And the things that you need are fruit that has a high level of pectin, natural pectin. And natural pectin is an enzyme in the plant, any plant. Lawns have pectin and trees have pectin. It's just happily, to make jam, we utilize the pectin in the fruit. And the highest level of pectin in fruit is just before it's ready to be picked. So my advice would be, stage one is to pick your own strawberries if you can, either from your garden or from a pick your own farm or somewhere like that. So that, because the pectin levels, once the fruit is picked, start to drop. So to get the highest level of natural pectin, pick the strawberries, make the jam. If you can't make the jam straight away, pick the strawberries, cook the fruit down so that it's just a mush in the pan, and then add the sugar later and carry on. For beginners, and even myself these days, if I'm buying strawberries, which I have done from a supermarket, I went like everybody else. I tore into Lidl after work and got what they had. I looked for the most recent date, and you don't want any from the reduced bit, that where they've been in the store perhaps 2 or 3 days. So, and then bring them back and make your jam as soon as you can after getting them. So that's one thing you need, is pectin. There are sort of quite complicated ways of measuring it, but just freshness is the key, really, and the variety. If you want to make strawberry jam a lot, and it's not quite what you want it to be the first time, look around for a different variety of strawberry, and you'll probably find one that fits the bill, and then always go for that one. The other thing you need is acid. Now, years ago, when I was a girl, it's quite a long time ago now, strawberries were prepared ahead. If you were going to eat them as part of a meal or as a treat, you would prepare them ahead and sprinkle them with sugar. They were far too tart to eat fresh. Well, at least the strawberries we had were, but I think that was generally the case. And you'd sprinkle caster sugar on them, and then you'd have whatever ice cream or whatever with them. These days, that has been bred out of them, because people want strawberries sort of, well, where's one in this book? This sort of size, and lovely and sweet. You see that? And they're bred genetically to become bigger. They're also pumped with a lot of water. They're watered a lot. And generally speaking, you sacrifice flavour, because all things that have flavour have a finite amount. It's what I can compare it to. You know, it's like I've got dark hair, but the more hair I've got, it doesn't mean it gets darker. It's still the same colour. And it's just that because that's genetically set. And it's the same with strawberries, it's the same with garlic. Just because you've got a great big fat bulb of garlic, it doesn't mean to say you're going to have masses of garlic flavour. You've just got a lot of garlic flesh with the same amount of flavour. Strawberries and fruit like that are the same. So if you're going to pick your own strawberries, if you can pick your own, or you go to a pick your own farm, keep to the smaller strawberries because they'll stay in a better shape in the jam, and go for some that are underripe because of the pectin. The acid these days, we add lemon juice because they nearly always aren't high enough in acid. So pectin, acid, okay? So what we do then is to get them in the pan, and I'm going to put the heat on very low so that they start to kind of melt. The third thing that we're going to add is sugar. You can see I've been chopping them up. I'm going to finish those off. You need sugar, obviously, to make the jam. And I'm going to stand here, right here now, and tell you, you need equal sugar to fruit. From me, I will not mess about with that formula. So if you want to get great at making jam and then you want to reduce the sugar, you can do that under your own steam. I am not going to teach you that. The sugar is there for the set. I'm not going to go on and on about sugar. We've done the sort of whys and wherefores about sugar. Equal sugar to fruit, and then you almost always will get a great set. And this sugar, I'm not great about the makers, but if I can, I get British sugar. But this sugar has added pectin. It's a jam sugar. It's cane sugar with added pectin. I would prefer a British beet sugar with added pectin, but that's because I live here. So that's just to bolster the pectin because of the kind of hybridization of the fruit these days, and they are so big and have so much water. I go for a jam sugar that has pectins because the result is almost always more successful than just trying to manipulate it with plain cane sugar. So I'm just going to put this on, which I didn't do when I said I was going to. I'm going to put it on to 3, which is not halfway round, which will just start to sort of let the fruit start to cook down a bit. And the last thing really that you're going to introduce to the jam that is essential is a high level of heat and a rolling boil. And we'll explain that when we come to it. If one of those elements, and there's sort of 4 of them, is missing, you're going to struggle. So don't be afraid of the sugar, don't be afraid of the heat, add the acid, and make sure you've got pectin in there somehow with the very freshest fruit that you can find. Not too squishy. You don't want overripe fruit for jam. It really doesn't have enough pectin, whatever kind of jam it is. And with strawberry, your sugar I'm going to use will have pectin added. If you can't find this sugar or it's too expensive, then use granulated sugar as we normally do, and add powdered pectin into it before you add it to the fruit. Mix it in thoroughly, and don't try and add powdered pectin into a liquid because it will just clump and make nasty sort of lumps of powdery gel in your jam. So to prepare the fruit, I'm just taking off the green tops. It depends what what jam you're making as to how you prepare it. But with strawberries, I'm just taking off the tops with a minimum amount of flesh left. Sometimes I use the end of a teaspoon, the bowl end of a teaspoon. But I'm keeping these in a little dish here, which if you want to make use of them, I'll talk about that in a moment. If the fruit's quite big, then cut it in half. If it's quite, reasonable sort of size, you can just add it straight into the pan. It's to keep strawberries kind of more whole, you can soak them in the sugar overnight, and that will help to keep them in a better shape, but I'm not really worried too much about that. There's enough complications going on without that added in. So I've got a kilo of fruit and a kilo of sugar. Put those in there. I've just finished putting the fruit in, and then I think there's a question or two to answer. And with fruit, try not to wash it, unless it's so really muddy or something. It's really best not to get it wet. You don't want to introduce any other liquid other than your lemon juice. Try to cook off some of the moisture, because lowering the moisture content is what makes jam keep for a long time. The things that spoil jam are looking for moisture, yeasts and molds and things like that. So if you reduce the moisture content, the environment for them won't be conducive to replication. They will still try and feed off of the jam if they get the chance, if it isn't covered properly, but they won't be successful in replicating and making that nice sort of grey fluffy hat that mouldy jam would have. So just squeezing my lemon. So 1 lemon to 1 kilo of fruit to 1 kilo of sugar. It's not complicated, easy to remember. I'm just going to rinse my fingers as well now. I'm going to put the lemon juice in because that will help to stop the fruit sticking to the pan. And that's why you should heat it slowly to start with, so that it doesn't stick and burn. So, they smell amazing. Turn that up a bit. Put these out of the way for the moment and get ready with my sugar in a second. So Brenda's saying it's a chemical reaction. Yeah. Yes, that's right. It is a chemical reaction between the acid in the fruit, the pectin, and the sugar, and the heat creates that reaction. And what happens is the sugar is inverted. It's sort of the first stage of making something like caramel or fudge. You don't take it that far, but that thickening that you get by cooking sugar for a long time creates the set, and that's what you're looking for, which is why the heat must be high enough. If you don't cook it high enough, if you're timid about it and you keep turning it down, you'll cook it for a long time, and yes, it will be thick, but it will be very sort of gluey. It won't be a gelled set, which is what we're looking for. That sort of gluiness comes from evaporation. You've driven off so much moisture from the fruit, and the sugar, it has maybe converted, but it's like you know, it's unspreadable and it's not proper jam, but it is usable. The only time you need to throw jam away is if you burn it. That's, you can't come back from that really. But that's where the heat is important. And to have a big enough pan, you don't need to have a special jam pan if you haven't made jam before, or you don't know if you want to make it again. Just use a big straight-sided pan. This shape just allows for lots of evaporation quite quickly. But also only fill your pan about a third full. You don't want it any higher because it will bubble up in the rolling boil, and you don't want to be worrying about it boiling over. Believe me, it does. You don't keep on doing it, that's for sure. So this is about right. That's why I stick to a kilo, and then you've got room to cope. And you can quickly make batch after batch like that with that smaller amount. I'm going to put the sugar in as well. And get it all stirred in to the fruit, because that is what you need to do with jam sugar. It's not quite the same with ordinary sugar. You would wait until the fruit was much more cooked down and then add the sugar. So I need to stir that to get that mixed into the fruit evenly. Another question. Elizabeth saying she, because of her what she does, I don't want to say it's a job. It's not a job. It's just incredible what you do with different teas. She soaks the fruit first and gets the flavour into the fruit of the tea, the different teas. It's not just, you know, a tea bag from that kind of thing. It's very kind of exotic teas made with fruits and flowers and all that kind of thing. So those, she's introducing those into the fruit. And she's saying, is it okay as long as it gets cooked down to setting point? I think what you need to do in that case is to, not necessarily what we're doing today with the pectin in the sugar, because it is a little bit of a different process, but with straightforward jams, I would cook that soaked fruit and dry off the kind of water in the tea and leave the flavour behind, and then you're back to square one, and then add your sugar and so on, and continue to the setting point. I wouldn't put the sugar in when it's still very kind of diluted. And you will just drive the if you've soaked the fruit and then you drive the moisture off, you should be okay, is my feeling about it. And from what I know, it's not something I've done. So you can see, as always, once you add sugar to anything, it becomes really quite liquid. It's mixed with the strawberries and the juices and made the whole thing very liquid. And I'll turn the heat up a bit. So we're going to wait for that to start cooking. And we need to dissolve that sugar before we get it boiling to the rolling boil. The sugar must be, those sugar crystals must be gone before we start trying to achieve a set. Excuse me. If you end up with sugar crystals in your set jam, those crystals will grow, which sounds a bit alarming, but if I don't know if you remember back in school, you would use, you could grow sugar crystals, and that's what crystals do. When you see crystals in, I was going to say in the wild, you know, when you see natural crystals, they're all different, they're all individual crystals sort of joined together in a very jagged way. And that's what will happen with the sugar crystals in your jam. It won't spoil it to the point where you can't eat it or use it. It just means if you spread it on your toast, it's often an unpleasant sharpness when you bite into it, and it can sort of hurt your mouth a little bit. But it's not off, there's nothing wrong with it. You don't need to throw it away. But again, if you end up melting it for some reason, those crystals will melt away. You know, I don't mean you need to do that to use it. But if you were cooking with it and put it into things like jam tarts or something, then they would melt again. It's just like taking one individual grain of sugar crystal, only it's big, it's massive, you know, it's sort of, it feels massive in your mouth, but it's actually probably, I don't know, a couple of millimeters across. But that's why we must get rid of this grittiness, the noise and the feel. You can feel the sugar with your spoon. You need to get down as much as possible off of the side where it's all congregated. And at this point, it's okay to stir the jam. And that will help the sugar to dissolve. The thing about stirring is it cools things down. And when we're trying to get the rolling boil for the set, you don't want to keep stirring it because you'll be cooling it all the time. That will mean you'll be cooking it for longer and getting back to the evaporation situation, which you don't want to do. This all needs to happen quite rapidly, relatively speaking. Another bit. You said it was 1 lemon to 1 kilo of fruit and 1 kilo of sugar. Well, the recipe said 2 lemons. 2 lemons is fine. It depends on the size of your lemon. I mean, the lemon I used was massive. So if you've got smaller lemons, which are not much bigger than a lime, then put 2. It won't matter to put 2. It will matter not to put 1 at all. So you can judge it. And sometimes you will put 1 to start with. And if you achieve the set with just 1, that's fine. If you don't, when you do a kind of reboil, you can add the juice of another lemon, which will often tip over the acidity enough to achieve the set again. It's I'm sorry about that if it's confusing. I've just looked at the lemons that I had and thought, golly, you know, really big. So I've got a little bit of sugar there. Just run your spoon around the crease of the pan to make sure there's no sort of little puddles of sugar sitting there. This is the time. You need to take time with this bit and make sure that you've done it thoroughly. I'm just going to use a spatula and run it around the side of my pan before it gets cooked on too much. Because my big wooden spoon is not scraping it down enough. There we are, let that bit melt. Now you should have your jars ready, prepared and in a low oven. Because once we achieve the set and everything, you know, there won't be time to do that. Do I add the lemon juice to all jams, including ones with very high pectin like marmalades? Marmalade, I do 12 oranges and 2 lemons, and those of you who've been with me a long time know that I cook the fruit whole. I don't then add more lemon juice unless I can't get a set. Now, I just have to quickly stop explanation so we can look at the jam. And you can see it's starting to froth up and get hotter. I'm just checking for the sugar. Can't hear any, and I can't feel any. So I need to get my timer ready, and I've got my saucer, which is room temperature. I sometimes put it in the fridge after I put the jam on it to test for a set. But I don't do it initially because it gets cold and then the jam creates condensation, which means the jam won't set anyway because it's sat in water. So I've got it on not the highest temperature, but quite high. You can see in a moment the foam bubbling up. We only have foam, that you'll remember. And we don't need to fret about that either. I'm going to try it for 6 minutes and see how we go. We might need a little bit longer. Wipe up this lemon juice off of my mat because I don't want to stand my jars in it. What I would say, going back to the lemons, is for inexperienced jam makers and beginners, always put the lemon juice. Don't quibble and try and decide whether you need it or you don't. It doesn't matter if it's in there. You won't kind of be eating it thinking, oh, this has got so much lemon in it. It will be fine. It will be back up. But yes, there are some jams that don't really need it. But if you're using a recipe book or something off the internet, they will probably specify. So the foam comes from the sugar, and it is only sugar. That's all it is. It's nothing nasty. It's nothing we need to scrape off and throw away. I mean, when I was very young, my mother would put it on a saucer and then I would eat that. That was my kind of payment for having passed her all the wax discs and the cellophane covers and the rubber bands to put on the jars because we didn't have lids then. It was all done. And she got me to do that to keep out of the way of the hot pan because I was well known for helping, shall we say. So I had my little jobs to do, and at the end of it, I'd have a nice piece of bread and butter, and I'd spread my foamy jam off of the saucer onto the bread and thoroughly enjoy it. But we don't really want that in the jar, but don't worry about it at the moment. This is kind of the rolling boil. The bubbles are fat, they're slow, but they're constant and they're right the way across the pan. That's what you need to see. And you don't need to keep stirring it unless you think if it's bubbling too hard and high and rising up the pan, then just lift the pan away from the heat for a second or two while you turn it down. It won't hurt the jam. Just put it on your heat mat and deal with the hob to make sure that you get the temperature down a little bit. But this is the sort of level that you need it at. If you're cooking it too high, there is the danger that it could catch and burn, which is not great. So I do a sort of figure of 8 now and again, just to check. And you can soon feel whether the bottom of the pan is a lot hotter than the top bit, which it will be it will be hotter because of the difference in height from the hob. But if it's too marked, then the bottom could burn before the top gets you're even aware that anything is wrong. And strawberries are notorious, apricots are notorious for that, also the other stone fruits like plums and green gages. So they're the ones to look out for, and just keep an eye on to make sure that there's nothing more disappointing, especially if you've grown the fruit or you've gone and picked it and you just think, oh no, all that work and you can't use it. Are we off the questions? We're okay, we're up to date. There's nothing quite like the smell of strawberry jam cooking, I think. We're quite lucky today. It's quite a sort of stormy day. If it's sort of a nice, hot, sunny day, you'll probably be plagued with wasps or something coming in. But we're okay today. We've got about 1 minute 30 to go. Get used to what the jam looks like and sounds like, and take a big sniff, smell what it should be smelling like with the sugar in there, you know, that kind of toasty, caramelly smell. Get used to what you should be achieving, and then it doesn't stay so difficult to do. It seems difficult when you first make jam, but if you get used to what you should be seeing and smelling and experiencing, really, then it just becomes easier. You don't have to think, is that a rolling boil or not? I don't know. And you know, it's as it should be. I still have jam that doesn't set, and there's sometimes nothing you can do about it. That kind of chemical equation, it just isn't there for some reason, and you may not have no kind of power over that at all, but it's as good as it can be if you stick to those ratios. I just try and alleviate a bit of the stress of it all, really. All right, that's my timer. I'm going to lift it off the heat. Right, a minute or two. Another question, I think. Yes, quintessential summer is actually. So I'm going to put a little bit on my saucer. If I can't get it with that flat bladed spoon. See if I can get through the foam to the jam underneath. And we'll put that on there. And I think we'll pop it in the fridge, give it a fighting chance, as it is so warm. And turn this off for a moment or two. Now, before this foam cooks and sets, stir it as much as you can. It will just set like, it isn't marshmallow, but that kind of thing. So just stir madly, backwards and forwards on yourself. Some jams you can alleviate all of it, mostly raspberry and blackcurrant, things like that. But these jams that produce a lot of foam from the natural sugars in the fruit and the sugar you've added, sometimes you can't get rid of all of it, but you can minimize it, and then it's quicker and easier to lift it off. You can kind of corral it all over one side of the pan and let it cook itself into a firmer sort of pad, which is easier to deal with than trying to get all these little bits off. So we'll do that for now. It's a beautiful colour under all that. And the fruit has stayed quite good shape, actually. It's not all cooked down into a pulp. You never can tell unless you know your strawberries. If you've got loads of strawberries in the garden, it's always worth making a few pots of jam if you've got enough, and you will know how they cook, then you'll be more sure. Right, I'm going to leave it like that for a second or two while we wait for the one out of the fridge. I'm just going to grab a glass of water. That's for me, not the jam. So leave your saucer in the fridge for a few minutes. What you're trying to do is you've put a thin layer on the saucer and you're cooling it down rapidly, and you're trying to see what will happen when the jam is in the jar and it's cooled down overnight. It's to save that kind of waiting and coming down, coming in the kitchen the next day and think, oh, has it set or not? Oh dear, I don't know. You'll have some idea of whether it's going to set or not, or whether we're going to have to reboil it, in which case I may add some more lemon juice, because that often kind of just brings everything together. So we're going to, we have a look at what it's doing in the fridge. Hasn't been in there very long actually, but now if you can see on the saucer, it's sort of slight, I don't know, you can see it's slightly proud of the saucer. If you put it on there and it just runs everywhere in a very sort of thin way, it is not ever going to set like that. Like this, you've got quite a, I think it's got a meniscus. I'll drag that up from science lessons, where you've got surface tension and it has stayed proud of there. To test it for a set, you've got one go at it. You use your little finger like a little snow plow, put it down on the saucer and push away from you, and you hope to see the telltale crinkle, which is great. And you can feel when you lift it up like that, the firmness of the top bit. It's still running underneath because it's still quite warm. And if I left it in there longer, it would be more obvious, but I'm happy with that. I'm going to lift off the rest of this foam. Pop it in my lemon squeezer base. I'll just use an ordinary metal spoon for that. You can put some butter in, sort of a knob of butter in, which will help to, Brenda, I'm not going to read what you've put the last word there, it's foam. You can do that, but I don't teach that, because a lot of people who go on to sell jam will literally come unstuck because it's another ingredient and it is a dietary allergy for dairy. So it's better to get to know how to make it without that, really. But if you're just going to eat it yourself and it's quick and easy, then yeah, go for it. I'm not going to be able to get all of this off, but you can get quite a lot of it because it has now cooked itself a bit more solid. Now, when you're at this stage, you don't want to be scraping the sides of the pan down into the bowl where the jam is, because that is well and truly cooked. And it will stay cooked and it will just float about in your jam and just look nasty. Now, I'm not quite sure how this is going to behave with this sugar. I'm going to leave it for a few more minutes, because the thing is, if you jar things up too soon that have got bits in them, they will rise to the top. That is just the law. So you need to leave it. I mean, with marmalade, you leave it sort of about 20 minutes, but marmalade is very kind of wet. With something like jam, it's probably going to be 5 to 10 minutes. And it will start to gel. It won't look any different, but chemically, it is starting to form its gel. And if you then put it into the jars, the fruit it's more difficult for it all to rise to the top. That's the principle then. while we're waiting for that, I'm just going to go through one or two other things. I don't know if any of you did the download from the rose petal workshop. I did all the other things that you could make. I put the download on there. So if you want that, you can go back and pick it up. And I'm just going to show you one or two things with what we've got here. Now, I said to keep the bits from your strawberries, and I think you will know. I'm just going to do a few more of these because I need these strawberries. You know, when you're preparing strawberries, your fingers smell strawberries for ages and ages afterwards. So you can utilize that. All these sort of ends have got their little bit of strawberry stuck to them, which is quite a powerful flavour. We're all about making use of all the flavour. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to take, because I need some whole strawberries as well. So first of all, in my jar here, I've got some white wine vinegar. You can use distilled malt if you want to, but white wine vinegar is a bit more of a delicate flavour. And I'll just, it's not measured, it's just a jar with some vinegar in, with some space. And I'm going to put roughly half of these tops in here. The bits of flesh and all that smell of strawberries is going to come off into the vinegar. You can put them in there for a few days and just give them a shake now and again. And then you use that, strain them out and bottle it and use them to make your salad dressings in the summer. Lovely, delicate strawberry flavour. And you could even add some fresh strawberries to some salads and that kind of thing to go with it. But that's a vinegar version. Another jar here, which is actually a preserving jar. I couldn't find another big jam jar. I'm going to put the rest of the stalky bits in there. And I'm going to pour over some vodka. And just as we've made the other flavoured vodkas at Christmas or when we did the apricots, I'm going to leave a little bit in there in case I need it, but soak it in there for a couple of weeks, give them a shake, and then make a simple syrup of equal sugar to water, cooked into a syrup, cool it, strain this, add the syrup, and you've got a lovely liqueur then for cocktails or, you know, summer cocktails or even in the winter. And I'm guessing it will take on a lovely sort of pale pink hue. Okay, so that's two things with the ends. There's still loads of flavour on them. Let's see how my jam's getting on. That's all right. Don't want it to set in the pan. Now this, you can make a strawberry syrup like we did with the rose petals. Just instead of soaking them in vodka, make the simple syrup and cook the ends in it. Instead of doing rose petals, do the ends of the strawberries. You don't need to leave them soaking, just do the cooking that we did. We had 250 ml of water, 200 grams of sugar, cooked until the sugar had dissolved, and we put in the petals where you would put in the strawberry ends, and then cook it for 5 minutes, strain them out, and then cook it until it's a little bit thicker. And that would be great on pancakes, pavlova. You can put it on ice cream and again in cocktails. This is just some butter. It's about 125 grams, about 4 ounces of butter. And with this, I'm going to chop up some of these strawberries. Not, you know, massively small. This is a good idea to use your softer ones for, if you've got some that are a bit too soft for jam. Strawberry vinegar can just, yeah, once it's sort of macerated for a couple of weeks, just strain out the bits, and then you can bottle it and keep it in the cupboard for as long as you like, really. Nothing should happen to it. And you can do that with all sorts of things, you know, herbs, you know, other fruits. It's just pleasing to be able to use things up that appear to be rubbish, but actually there's loads of flavour still in the ends there. So I'm going to do this other big one. I probably don't need those at the moment. And just chop them, I'll just slice them and then a bit like an onion across and across. Right. And then I'm going to swoosh all of those into my butter. With the sticky bits. Yes, yes, you can do that, most definitely. Add some sugar when you strain the vinegar, just stir in some caster sugar or something, just to sweeten it a bit, or make the vinaigrette, put it in with that, you know. So I've got my butter, I've got my strawberries. Then I'm going to put in some icing sugar as well, not masses. I think probably a couple of spoonfuls will be enough. I do one at a time. I always put too much in and I've got no room to move. But I might just do one spoonful and see how that stirs in. Now this strawberry butter is fabulous. If you can remember, you know, imagine you can just make some little scones or scones, some of the little ones, you know, only about 3 centimeters across, sort of an inch size, and then just split them and spread them with this strawberry butter, and then just do a bit more icing sugar over the top to serve. Or you could do little sponge cakes and do like the butterfly cakes we used to do as kids, you know, cut the top off, make the wings, put a little bit of this in, and it's slightly sweetened. You can put more sugar in if you want to. I won't now because I don't want my jam to sit in the pan, but that's the principle. Or you could make it, add more sugar and then roll it up in baking parchment and then foil, freeze it for about an hour, slice it and then put it back in the freezer, and then in the winter you can have it on pancakes. Just serve them on top of the pancakes and dusted with icing sugar. And that is delicious as well. Right, let's get my jars, or I better get that, otherwise I'll make a mess everywhere. There we go. Oh, get some jars. I don't know how many jars it will make. There's my funnel. Turn it around, get the funnel right up to the pan, and then we need to get this. We need to stir it so that the fruit is distributed. You don't want to use all jelly or use all the fruit in the first 2 jars, and then all you've got is jelly left. So you've got to kind of even it out a bit. And filling the jars right to the top, no gaps. And then as it cools, it will shrink away, but the lid will be on and you'll have a nice vacuum there. and nothing can grow in a vacuum. So you won't open the jar and find a nasty little hat of mould on the top, as we used to as kids. Don't worry about the little bits of foam on there. And then pop the lid on straight away. And I know usually I sort of do a few and then finish off and then go back and do it later, but I don't want this to set in the pan. Only time will tell if the strawberries stay distributed all through, and that comes again from kind of experience of judging how at what stage the jam's at. But I don't think myself that you need to beat yourself up over it. It's only if you're going to be putting it in front of somebody from the WI to say how good it is that you really need to worry about that. Let's get it in the jars first and then see. Well, if you do the first jar and you really, really, really want it, even, then either leave that first jar or empty it back into the pan and just leave it another 5 minutes. You won't spoil anything. I'm really pleased how whole these fruits have stayed, actually. These strawberries were British, they were from Kent, so they haven't travelled all that far, which is another good thing. That strawberry batter is really smelling fantastic. It's you could also put it in sort of little tiny sandwiches. I mean, that would be really a lovely sort of fresh idea for a kind of afternoon tea. Take the crusts off though, don't have it all. I'm just going to get this last jar, and some juice. I don't know if I want to get any more of that in. I'll probably put it in with my vodka, actually. It's only fruit and sugar. There we are. The lid. I can't tell in this light actually how we're doing on the fruit distribution, but if it all floats to the top and it's not an issue to you, then just stir it a bit when you use it and distribute the fruit that way, or put it out in a dish or something. Really life's too short to be worrying about your fruit levels in your jam, I think. Can you turn the jars up a couple of times to make sure the fruit is distributed? I know I don't heat the lids in the oven. I don't do anything to the lids at all. They just get so compromised if you start trying to heat them or wash them. The heat from the jam and the jars sterilizes them as you go. It's really not a problem. Turning the jars upside down, you can. I've done my share of that, but it disturbs the gelling, and you nearly always find you think, oh, I've just got it right. It's cooled down enough, and they're all in the right place. And then you come back a couple of hours later, and they've still floated up to the top. So I've given up on that, but you can try it if you want to do that. But just be aware, the more you keep tipping it about, the more likely it is that you're going to destroy that delicate gel that really is what we're after. I think this has now had a bit more chance to cool off. And you can see that is just pretty near perfect. So I don't know. I didn't know they did. The way the French turn their jars upside down. I don't know. People do all kinds of things, and I think sometimes it's because they don't fill the jars to the top. So they turn it up so that the heat of the jam is on the lid, but when you turn them back again, it will sink. So I don't know what it's supposed to achieve. You'll only achieve the vacuum if you fill the jar right to the top, seal it immediately, and then let the jam shrink naturally. All hot things get smaller when they cool down. So it's going to happen. So put it in the jar, put the lid on, leave it, is my advice. You don't have to follow it, but that's what I always do. I don't do all this turning and, you know, various things. So the other thing, if you go onto YouTube, I think if you just search for strawberries preserved in sugar. I don't know what the link is. I meant to look it up before I started this. There's a fabulous video on there of a lady and a gentleman in what looks like Afghanistan, or you know, one of the Eastern Bloc, more Eastern Bloc than that, possibly Poland or somewhere like that. Anyway, I don't think it actually says. But anyway, they've got a small holding, classic sort of wraparound pinny and you know, hair done up in a headscarf, and the chap's got a battered old hat on, and they've got a small holding, and they've got a vast field of strawberries. And what they do, they take them to market. They go all through these strawberry fields picking every day, and that day's pick they prepare. They do it all outside. They've got a table, and they've got a vast like aluminium bowl about this big across, and they tip all the strawberries in, and they tip water in and sluice it all around. I'll try to put the link up there for you, and that's good. And then they prep them, they take the tops off. I don't know whether they make vinegar or strawberry vodka with it. And then they've got huge glass jars. They're about this tall, they're about this big round. And once they prep them all and they've taken the ends off and everything, they pour sugar over the whole lot, really deep. And then the arms go in and then, you know, turn it all to the sugar. And then she's got like an old enamel kind of big cup, and she scoops it out and puts them in these jars, and they take them to market. And they don't cook them, the sugar preserves them, and they stay like that. And that's what people have during the winter on their, I don't know, rice puddings or whatever, or they just eat them like that. It's a real treat to have that sort of sweet treat in the depths of the cold of winter. And they just keep like that, which is the proof of sugar preserving things. It's a lovely little film, and there's no, they don't say anything. It's just, you just watch them doing what they're doing. It's just where they get all this big kit from, I don't know, these big dishes and big jars and everything. But one day I may find them, but I'm not going to do that many strawberries. Anyway, is there any merit in giving the lids an extra twist 10 minutes or so after you put on the lid? No, because this modern lid, the shaped bits here, and if Trev can run out and turn the camera over again for me. The shapes here that you can see, there's no thread on the jar lid like you would get on like a honey jar, and there's these sticky out bits all the way around. On the jar, again, there is a thread, but they're just these raised bits of moulding here, but they're not joined up. They're not a thread, a screw thread. So when you put the lid on, you engage it onto the top and you twist it on, and those shaped lugs find the next available shape in the moulding. And that's as far as they go. And the vacuum formed by the jam cooling and shrinking holds that down tight, and it will often dip the centre bit of the lid down as well. If you turn it too far, those shaped lug bits will strip. They call it, you know, people say, oh, you strip the lugs. It means you've straightened them out, and they won't grip anything then. The lid is useless. So you need to just engage it, give it a twist until it's firm. You don't need to keep on like this and then leave it. And the vacuum does all the work. You don't need to worry about having buttons in the lids. That's not really going to prove anything to anybody about the jam setting or anything like that. All that does is provide tamper evidence, and that is usually employed by commercial products. We don't stock button lids except for one customer that asks for them, but that's one customer in one colour, in one size. If we had to have button lids for all of the sizes that we stock, we'd have to have a bigger warehouse because it would double the size of our lid stock. Excuse me. And it's for home production, it's just irrelevant. It's you just don't need it. But people seem to think that those buttons have got some sort of magical power to keep the jam fresh or keep it for a long time. Your method of making and the method of putting it into the jar and sealing it is what's going to keep your jam usable for years. You can happily keep it for several years and it will be fine. So don't get hung up on button lids, and don't over tighten them, because it will never work, and you will then be, you know, you'll have to find another lid for that jar. Okay, I think that's all the questions. That's all my list. Strawberry vodka, strawberry syrup, strawberry vinegar, and strawberry butter. So I will hopefully see you all next week, and I hope you enjoy your jam. I hope it's successful for you, and there's nothing quite like a strawberry jam, I don't think, really, when it comes to it. Thank you for watching. Thank you.